Since my childhood, mysteries and macabre stories have always fascinated me, and no place in the world seemed to hold more dark secrets than the Cecil Hotel in the heart of Los Angeles. I had read about the numerous suicides, murders, and disappearances associated with the hotel. Every floor, every room seemed impregnated with a terrible story begging to be told. And for some inexplicable reason, I felt it was my responsibility to return to that place and uncover the truth hidden in its worn walls. It was on a cold autumn night that I arrived at the Cecil. The hotel had been renovated, renamed, in an attempt to clean up its tarnished reputation. But for those who knew its true history, it would always be the Cecil, a landmark of urban decay and human horror. As I entered the lobby, a shiver ran down my spine. The environment was almost empty, with only a few dim lights illuminating the vast space. The walls, although freshly painted, seemed to whisper secrets from decades past. The receptionist, a young woman with a tired look, welcomed me with a forced smile. "May I help you?" she asked, her voice echoing slightly in the open space. "Yes, I would like a room. I'm here to stay for a few days," I replied, trying to sound casual. She nodded, typing something into the computer. "Any preference for floor or room?" "It can be any, but if possible, I would like one with history," I said, letting the word hang in the air, loaded with meaning. For a moment, I saw a spark of understanding in her eyes before she masked it. "We have room 413 available. They say that, well, you asked for history." She left the sentence unfinished, as if fearing to invoke something by speaking too much. "Perfect," I said, receiving the key card. The elevator was old, creaking as we slowly ascended to the 4th floor. Every movement seemed to resonate through the building, as if the hotel itself was alive, watching my every step. When the doors opened, a dimly lit corridor stretched out before me, the lights flickering sporadically. I walked to room 413, each step echoing on the faded carpet. As I inserted the key into the door, a sensation of vertigo hit me. It was as if by opening that door, I was crossing a threshold not just physical but also spiritual, entering a world where normal rules did not apply. The room was surprisingly normal at first glance, with a double bed, a small desk, and a window overlooking the illuminated city below. But there was a palpable feeling in the air, a sort of static electricity that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I left my suitcase beside the bed and sat down, trying to collect my thoughts. Why was I there? What was I hoping to discover? My reflections were interrupted by a low noise coming from the bathroom, as if someone was whispering my name. I stood up slowly and walked towards the sound. Upon opening the bathroom door, the fogged mirror reflected not just my image but also something else, a shadow behind me that was not there when I last looked. I froze, staring fixedly at the blurred figure reflected in the mirror. For an instant, nothing else moved. Not even the air seemed to dare circulate in the small bathroom. The shadow was indistinct, more a dark stain than a defined shape, but I felt the intensity of its gaze on me. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and slowly turned to face the emptiness behind me. There was nothing there, just the old bathtub and tiles faded by decades. But the feeling of being watched persisted. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. It was just my imagination, influenced by the macabre stories I had read about the Cecil. I decided to take a shower, thinking that the hot water might help me relax and dispel the unease that had settled in me. As the water fell over my body, the whispers began again. This time, they were clear, almost as if someone were in the room, speaking directly into my ear. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was pleading, like a lament or a cry for help. I turned off the shower and wrapped myself in a towel, hurriedly leaving the bathroom. The room was still empty, the only light coming from the bedside lamp I had left on. I determined that I needed fresh air, perhaps a walk through the hotel corridors to clear my mind. As I walked down the corridor, the carpet seemed to absorb the sound of my footsteps, creating an oppressive silence. Here and there, I heard the sound of other doors closing, muffled voices arguing behind the walls, life continuing unaware of what I was experiencing. Upon reaching the lobby, I noticed that the environment had changed. It was no longer the almost sepulchral emptiness of when I arrived. Guests formed small groups, talking in whispers that ceased when I passed by. The looks were curious, some even fearful. I wondered if they also felt or knew something beyond my understanding. I decided to speak to the receptionist again, seeking some explanation or at least some validation that I was not losing my sanity. She looked at me cautiously as I approached. "Are you okay?" she asked, a wrinkle of concern marking her forehead. I heard things. In my room. Whispers. Do you know anything about that?" My words came out more desperate than I intended. She hesitated, looking around before leaning forward, lowering her voice. "It's not uncommon. Some guests report strange experiences. The Cecil has a long history, not all of it good. If you want, I can try to change your room." "No, it's not necessary," I responded quickly. After all, I was there to discover the secrets of the Cecil, not to run from them. "Can you tell me more about room 413? About what happened there?" She pondered for a moment, then sighed. "I'll tell you what I know, but please be discreet about it. We don't want to alarm the other guests." I agreed, and she began to recount the tragic story of room 413, marked by incidents that had occurred over the years, each adding another layer to the mosaic of tragedies that was the Cecil Hotel. The receptionist looked around once more before continuing, her voice a nearly inaudible whisper. "Room 413 has been the scene of several deaths over the years, some by suicide, others... Well, not all deaths were so easily explained. Decades ago," she continued, "a young woman disappeared from the room without a trace. The police never found her body or any sign of violence. It was as if she had evaporated. And then, in the 70s, a man was found dead there, hanged. The police concluded it was suicide, but rumors suggested he had discovered something he wasn't supposed to." Her words echoed in my mind, bringing a new wave of chills down my spine. "And recently?" I asked, almost not wanting to hear the answer. "Recently, the room was closed for a while. There were reports of guests hearing voices and seeing shadows. When we reopened it, we performed a blessing in the room, hoping to calm whatever might be there." She shrugged, an attempt to downplay it, but her eyes betrayed genuine concern. I thanked her for the information and returned to my room, her words swirling in my head. I decided I needed a night of observation and investigation. If the Cecil really harbored supernatural secrets, I was determined to uncover them. I spent the next few hours preparing, positioning a small camera to record any activity during the night and a voice recorder beside the bed, hoping to capture the whispers. Everything was ready. I lay down on the bed, lights off, only the soft city lights filtering through the window. The silence of the night was almost palpable, and as I settled in, the exhaustion from the day's emotions began to take over. I was on the brink of sleep when I heard the first whisper. It was soft, so low it could have been mistaken for the wind, but I knew it wasn't. "Help me?" the voice said, clear and anguished. I jumped out of bed and ran to the recorder, pressing the button to ensure it was capturing everything. The voice came again, more urgent this time. "Please, they don't know." There was no one in the room besides me, and the temperature had dropped drastically, a cold that rooted in my bones. I determined to stay awake all night, listening and observing. As the hours dragged on, the whispers continued, sometimes a single word, other times disjointed sentences. I noted everything, trying to find meaning or pattern. When dawn began to seep through the curtains, the whispers ceased as abruptly as they had begun. Exhausted but determined, I knew I had a lot of work ahead. I needed to review the recordings, search old records, anything that could shed light on the mysteries of room 413. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, one thing was clear. Something or someone in the Cecil Hotel needed help, and I was there to discover what, no matter how deep I had to dig into the dark secrets of the past. The first rays of sunlight brought a sort of temporary relief, but my mind was far from at peace. The morning at the Cecil Hotel seemed to bathe the place in a light that belied the dark secrets of the previous night. Determined to find out more, I spent the first hours of the day reviewing the recordings, listening to every whisper and word captured. The whispers were distinct, and one voice in particular stood out. It was a female voice, speaking with an urgent and fearful tone. This made me think of the young woman who had disappeared decades ago. Could it be possible that she was still asking for help, trapped between worlds, unable to find peace? I decided that I needed more information and that the answers might be in the hotel archives or even at the public library, in old newspaper records. Before leaving, I went to the reception desk, where the same attendant from the previous night was finishing her shift. You mentioned a young woman who disappeared here in the 50s, right? I asked, trying to sound as casual as possible so as not to alarm her. Do you know where I can find more information about that? Maybe hotel archives or police records? She looked around, ensuring no one else could hear, and then leaned forward. The hotel archives are in the basement in a locked room. Usually only management has access, but give me a moment. She disappeared into the back and returned a few minutes later with a key. Please be discreet, she whispered, handing me the key, and return this before my boss arrives. I thanked her and headed straight for the basement. The place was a maze of dimly lit corridors and storage rooms, with an air of abandonment and neglect. Finally, I found the archive room, a space filled with dusty boxes and folders. I spent hours there, flipping through documents, guest records, and police reports. With each page turned, the mystery deepened. The missing woman was named Elisa, a student from out of town who had come to Los Angeles seeking adventure. Her last recorded night at the hotel was full of oddities, with witnesses reporting seeing her talking to herself and seeming disturbed. Additionally, I found references to a diary that Elisa kept, mentioned in the police records but never found. The clues suggested she might have discovered something at the hotel, something she wanted to document. What could be so important, so dangerous? Armed with this new information, I knew my investigation was just beginning. The search for Elisa's lost diary, the secrets it contained, and understanding what really happened to her in room 413 became my new focus. Solving this mystery was no longer just a matter of curiosity. It was now a personal mission. And so, while the city awakened outside, I was immersed in the whispers of the past, increasingly determined to bring to light the hidden truths in the shadows of the hotel. Armed with the gathered information and the suspicion that Elisa had left clues about what she had discovered, I decided that the next logical step was to search for the lost diary. I had a hunch that the diary might be hidden somewhere within the hotel itself, perhaps in a place that only Elisa knew or considered safe. I returned to room 413, the epicenter of all the strange phenomena and supposedly the last place Elisa was seen. The room, during the day, had an almost ordinary appearance, with its worn furniture and view of bustling Los Angeles. However, now I saw the space with new eyes, searching for any sign or anomaly that might indicate a hiding spot. I began with a meticulous search. I moved the bed, checked behind the pictures and inside every drawer. Nothing seemed out of place, which only intensified my frustration. I sat on the bed, contemplating the room when my eyes fell on the bathroom mirror, the same one that had reflected the shadow on my first night. I stood up and went to the bathroom, inspecting the mirror. It was an old model, fixed to the wall by a heavy metal bracket. As I touched the mirror, I felt slight mobility. I pushed harder, and to my surprise, the mirror moved, revealing a hollow space behind the wall. Inside, covered by a thin layer of dust, was a small, worn-out notebook. My heart raced as I picked it up. It was Elisa's diary. I leafed through the pages with trembling hands, each entry revealing a bit more about Elisa's mind and what she had discovered. Elisa wrote about the hotel with a mix of fascination and fear. She mentioned voices she heard at night, conversations that seemed to come from the walls, stories of former guests who had never left the Cecil. But one page in particular caught my attention. She described a sort of secret meeting in the hotel's basement, an event that took place monthly, involving some of the staff and outsiders. Elisa suspected these meetings were linked to the supernatural occurrences in the hotel. I determined that my next action would be to investigate these meetings. If Elisa was right, then what happened at these gatherings could be the key to understanding not only the hotel's past, but also solving the mystery of her death. With the diary as my new evidence, I felt a wave of determination. The night was approaching, and with it, my opportunity to explore the basement once more. This time, I knew exactly what I was looking for. As the city began to calm down with the setting sun, and the Cecil Hotel, with its many stories and secrets, seemed almost inviting, I was about to delve deeper into its dark heart, armed with the truth Elisa had fought so hard to uncover. Whatever these shadows held, I was determined to bring them to light. Equipped with Elisa's diary and unshakable determination, I returned to the basement of the Cecil Hotel as the night swallowed the last remnants of light. The key the receptionist had given me was still with me, weighing in my pocket as a reminder of what was at stake. The hotel's basement was a different place at night. The long corridors seemed to stretch endlessly. Every shadow cast by the dim lights seemed to hide a secret. Following Elisa's directions from her diary, I searched for the location mentioned in her entries, an old service hall that had been used for mysterious meetings. I reached an old metal door, hidden behind a series of dusty boxes and cleaning equipment. The place was so discreet that, without Elisa's specific directions, I would never have found it. Taking a deep breath, I used the key to unlock the door, the sound of the metal turning in the lock echoing through the oppressive silence. Inside, the hall looked abandoned for years. Stacked chairs, a long table covered by a dusty tarp, and in the air, a musty smell of disuse. But there was something more, a tingling in the air, a sense that this place had been the scene of many things that should never have happened. With a flashlight in hand, I began to explore the space. On the floor, almost completely covered by dust, I found strange symbols worn by time but still visible. They were intertwined circles and stars, clearly used in some kind of ritual. Elisa's words about secret meetings and dark rituals began to make sinister sense. As I searched the place, my recorder continuously captured, hoping to catch any abnormal sound. And then it happened. A faint voice, almost lost in the background noise, but definitely a voice. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. It was a cry for help, the same kind of plea I had heard in room 413. Convinced that there was something more there, I decided to set up a small surveillance. I placed cameras in the corners of the hall, pointing to the symbols on the floor and the central table. If something or someone still frequented this place for occult practices, I would capture evidence. Upon finishing the setup, I sat in one of the dusty chairs, contemplating the darkness around me. The wait for dawn would be long but necessary. The hours passed slowly, each noise making me jump in anticipation of a revelation. Finally, as the first rays of sun began to filter into the basement, I reviewed the camera recordings. To my surprise, a shadow appeared in the images, moving with a dark purpose around the hall. The shadow stopped in the center, raised its arms as if summoning something or someone. Armed with this indisputable evidence, I knew Elisa's stories were true. Something was still happening at the Cecil Hotel, something as old as the building's foundations themselves. Now, more than ever, I was determined to uncover the whole truth, not just for myself but for Elisa and all the souls that might still be trapped within its walls. After capturing the images of the mysterious shadow in the basement, my determination to uncover the secrets of the Cecil Hotel only intensified. I spent the next day meticulously reviewing each frame of the recordings, trying to identify any detail that could be a clue about the identity of the shadow or the purpose of its actions. The images were grainy, and the figure was ethereal, more a shadow than a physical presence. However, one thing was clear: there was ritualistic involvement. The movements of the shadow, the way it positioned itself and gestured, all indicated a carefully orchestrated ceremony. I decided that I needed specialized help. I contacted an anthropology professor from the local university, an expert in occultism and ancient ritual practices, showing him the recordings without revealing their origin. He was visibly intrigued and agreed to help me decipher what we were seeing. While waiting for the professor's return, I continued exploring the hotel, especially the areas Elisa had mentioned in her diary. Every corner of the Cecil seemed to whisper secrets. Every corridor echoed with the echoes of past stories. The next night promised a full moon, a time that, according to Elisa's diary, was significant for the secret meetings. Armed with cameras and recorders, I positioned myself once again in the basement, this time hidden behind a pile of boxes, hoping to capture the meeting in action. As midnight approached, I heard footsteps echoing down the corridor. Hooded figures began entering the hall, each moving with a dark purpose. My heart raced as I recorded everything, every whisper, every chant. They formed a circle around the symbols on the floor, beginning a ritual involving candles, incense, and chants in a language I did not recognize. After the ritual, the figures dispersed as quickly as they had arrived, leaving behind an atmosphere charged with mystery. I returned to my room, exhausted but with the recordings I needed. Dawn found me sending the videos to the professor, who promised a quick analysis. Shortly after, he returned with disturbing information. The chants were ancient invocations, usually associated with practices of spiritual contact and opening portals between dimensions. He was convinced that the group was trying to reach something or someone specific, perhaps entities they believed to be trapped within the hotel. With this new understanding, I knew I had to act. Not just to uncover the truth behind the group's activities, but also to stop whatever they were trying to achieve. If Elisa was right in her suspicions, these practices could be dangerous not only to those involved, but to everyone in the hotel. Armed with the professor's information and the recordings of the meetings, I prepared for the next step. Confronting the ritual members, completely unveiling their objectives, and if possible, ending the occult practices that had permeated the Cecil Hotel for decades. That night, while the Cecil Hotel slept under the veil of darkness, I prepared for the most significant confrontation of my investigation. Equipped with the recordings and the professor's information, I knew I couldn't simply face the group without a plan. My strategy was to confront them with evidence during one of their gatherings, demanding explanations and seeking an end to their dangerous activities. About an hour before midnight, I positioned myself near the underground hall, hidden by shadows, my camera ready to capture anything that might happen. Anxiety grew inside me with each passing minute, a mix of fear and determination. As the members began to arrive, again wearing the cloaks I now recognized as part of their ritual attire, I prepared to step out of the shadows. They began their ritual, and at that moment I decided to intervene. Turning on the flashlight and walking determinedly into the circle, I confronted them. "What you are doing here needs to stop," I spoke firmly, my voice echoing through the stone walls of the basement. The group members turned towards me, surprised and clearly displeased with my presence. One of them, who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward. "You don't understand what we're doing here. This is none of your business," he said, his voice a threatening whisper. "I've seen everything. The rituals, the chants, what you're trying to achieve. This is dangerous and could be affecting not just you, but everyone who enters this hotel," I retorted, showing them the camera. "I know about the spirits you're trying to contact and the dimensions you're trying to open. Where is Elisa? She found out about this, didn't she?" The group exchanged nervous glances, and then the leader sighed. "Elisa was an accident. She found out too much, tried to interfere. What we do here is ancient, older than you can imagine. We try to contact entities that, yes, are trapped here, but our goal is to free them so they no longer cause harm." The revelation left me stunned but still skeptical. "And you believe this justifies the consequences? The people who were hurt, the lives lost? We don't seek to cause harm, but sometimes the path to purification is painful," he replied, his gaze fixed on mine. Knowing I couldn't let this continue, I pulled out a copy of the recordings from my backpack and offered it to him. "I will make this public. Unless you stop, everyone will know what's happening here." The leader took the copy, considering his options. After a long moment, he nodded. "We will stop, for now, but we can't guarantee others won't try in the future. This is bigger than you imagine." With a precarious agreement established, the members began to disperse, their figures disappearing into the shadows as if they were part of them. I was left alone in the hall, adrenaline starting to give way to exhaustion and reflection. I returned to my room at the Cecil Hotel, the first lights of dawn already tinging the sky. I knew the battle I had fought that night was just part of a larger war, a war between the known and the unknown, between the mundane and the mystical. As I prepared for the next stage, one thing was clear. The Cecil Hotel would never be the same for me, and perhaps I would never be the same. After the tense confrontation in the basement of the Cecil Hotel, the ensuing silence seemed to carry its own weight. The next nights passed without incident, without whispers in the walls or shadows in the corridors. The agreement with the group seemed to have brought temporary calm, but I knew silence could be deceptive. I decided to use this time of calm to delve deeper into the hotel's history, focusing on the entities the group was trying to contact. I dived into old archives, interviewed local historians, and consulted experts in paranormal phenomena. Each piece of information added more layers to the stories that made up the Cecil's legacy. While compiling the information, I realized the Cecil Hotel was not just a point of supernatural activity by chance. It was a nexus, a point where various lines of spiritual energy converged. The stories of disappearances, ghostly sightings, and unexplained events were not mere coincidences. They were manifestations of energy deeply rooted in the building's foundations. One afternoon, while reviewing my notes in the hotel lobby, an elderly woman approached me. Her gaze was piercing, almost as if she could see through me. "You're meddling with things you don't fully understand, aren't you?" she said, her voice low and raspy. Surprised, I only nodded. She sat next to me, continuing, "I grew up here. My father was the manager in the 60s. The Cecil always had a peculiar aura. But what many don't know is that it all started long before it became a hotel. This place was sacred, a meeting place for the natives, a place where they spoke to spirits. This new information was a shock. "You're saying the hotel was built on a site already considered spiritually active?" She nodded. "Yes, and what those groups do, the rituals, they just reactivate that energy, sometimes irresponsibly. If you really want to understand and maybe find a way to pacify this place, you need to understand its history from the beginning." Inspired by her words, I decided the next phase of my mission would be to discover more about the pre-hotel origins of the land. I consulted old maps, city records, and historical documents, trying to trace the timeline of the site from before the Cecil's construction. This dive into history revealed that the hotel was built on what was once a meeting point for indigenous rituals, confirmed by artifacts found in previous excavations in the area. This explained the intense spiritual activity and perhaps provided a key to resolving the continuous mysteries. Armed with this new knowledge, I was ready to face whatever was necessary to bring peace to the Cecil. With a renewed respect for the site's traditions and stories, I planned an approach that honored the spiritual past of the land, seeking not only to calm the present energies but also to protect those who, like Elisa, had suffered from the disturbances caused by centuries of neglected history. With firm resolve, I knew the coming days would be crucial. I was on the path not just to reveal but to heal the wounds of a place that had seen more than its share of shadows and sorrows. Equipped with the knowledge of the sacred origins of the land on which the Cecil Hotel was built, I decided it was essential to perform a cleansing and pacification ritual. Respecting the practices and beliefs of the native peoples who considered this land sacred would be vital. To this end, I sought the help of local indigenous spiritual leaders, explaining the situation and seeking guidance to perform a ritual that honored the appropriate traditions. After several meetings and discussions, a small group of spiritual leaders agreed to help me. They emphasized the importance of approaching the site with respect and care, using practices that promoted healing and reconciliation between the disturbed energies of the past and the present. We arranged to perform the ritual during the next new moon, a time traditionally associated with new beginnings and deep renewal. The group brought sacred objects and herbs used in their cleansing practices, and I prepared the space in the hotel following their instructions carefully. On the night of the ritual, the hotel was silent, almost as if awaiting the event. The group of spiritual leaders, dressed in ceremonial attire, began preparing the space, creating a circle of stones and herbs around which the ritual would take place. Candles were lit, and each step was accompanied by soft chants in their native language. As the ritual progressed, I felt a shift in the air. A sense of relief and serenity began to spread throughout the environment. The leaders moved with a grace that seemed to echo through time, their voices rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm that filled every corner of the hotel. When the ritual reached its climax, each participant placed an offering in the center of the circle, small objects representing healing and peace. The group's leader then uttered a final blessing, asking the spirits to find rest and for negative energies to be dissipated and transformed into light. At the end, the group remained silent for several minutes, each reflecting on the experience. Gradually, we began to dismantle the ritual space, carefully packing the objects and extinguishing the candles. The spiritual leaders expressed a sense of cautious optimism, suggesting that the ritual had been successful, but that continuous vigilance would be necessary to ensure the site remained at peace. In the following days, the atmosphere at the Cecil Hotel seemed visibly lighter. Guests and staff commented on a sense of relief and a calmer ambience. For me, it was confirmation that respecting the site's traditions and stories was the right path to resolving the mysteries and disturbances that had plagued the hotel for so many years. Although aware that some of the Cecil's mysteries might never be completely solved, I felt I had done my best to honor Elisa's memory and all those who had been affected by the hotel's tumultuous history. With the ritual completed and peace seemingly restored, I knew it was time to document everything I had learned, ensuring the story of the Cecil both its shadows and its healing, would not be forgotten. Looking at the Cecil Hotel, now bathed in the soft evening light, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and accomplishment. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but also learning and growth. It was a chapter of my life I would never forget, a testament to the power of respect and reconciliation with the past. Subscribe to our channel and enjoy the next horror story that is playing on the screen.